Hello, so this is the third and final video of me doing a walkthrough of the 2017 Edexcel History A Level paper 1C Britain 1625 to 1701. And in this video, I'm going to be talking through section C, which is the compulsory interpretation section. I have done a video on answering these type of questions, as well as a kind of content revision video, and I've also done a walkthrough of another past paper before, all of which I'll link to in the description. So if you haven't watched the video on how to answer these questions, definitely watch that first, because I'm going to be going through this quite quick, so hopefully you're kind of up to speed with how to answer it before you have a look at this one. As I've said in previous videos, this is just one approach. I'm not saying it's the best approach or the only approach. Okay. So, the question is, in light of differing interpretations, how convincing do you find the view that the Glorious Revolution did not have revolutionary effects? Okay, so that's what we're talking about. The Glorious Revolution did not have revolutionary effects. Whether the Glorious Revolution had revolutionary effects or not. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just go down to the interpretations here. And what you can do is, if you haven't seen this before, you can look at these in your own time. I'm just gonna get going with this. So I'm kind of expecting that you've kind of read them, or you've looked at them, so you can pause it and read it. So the first extract is from Barry Coward, and Barry Coward is basically arguing that the Glorious Revolution did not have revolutionary effects, and the focus of this extract is solely on 1688 and 89. Okay, so that's something, as you're looking at this in the exam, try and highlight what the focus is. So 1688 to 89. Yeah, that's really what it is, and it's in agreement with the question. Glorious Revolution didn't have revolutionary effects. Okay, so some extracts. So the structure of this is you give a point. So your kind of topic sentence is, what is the overall argument of the extract? Then give a quote, and then give some own knowledge to support or challenge the quote, and then say whether, therefore, this makes the extract convincing or not. So I'm just going to be putting the line there. So this is line 2 I'm going to use. The Glorious Revolution did not have revolutionary effects, and so that would be the quote I would use, and then the evidence I would use to support that is that the Bill of Rights was vague. Okay, so it said that, for example, there should be free and fair elections, but it didn't say what that meant, and it didn't have any mechanisms of enforcement, like what would happen if William didn't go along with that. Okay, so the Bill of Rights is vague, therefore that supports Coward's argument that the Glorious Revolution did not have revolutionary effects. Okay, and we're aiming for about 3 kind of quotes per paragraph. So then I would go to lines 7 and 8, and it says, it's clear that those people in 1689 hoped to make who in 1689 hoped to make major constitutional or ecclesiastical changes were swept aside. So this idea that there wasn't great change, that anybody calling for great change was just kind of pushed to one side, just kind of ignored. And to support that, you could say that the Toleration Act of 1689, maintained Anglican supremacy. Okay, because the Test and Corporation Acts remained in place. Okay, so that meant that to hold public office, you had to be an Anglican, so therefore there wasn't a major ecclesiastical change or constitutional change. So you're agreeing with Coward so far that, yeah, the Glorious Revolution didn't have revolutionary effects. And then finally, if we go to lines, let's have a look, 9 and 10, they were determined to restore old liberties, not enact new ones. Okay? And what I think you could say here is that this is true of 1688 to 89, but not of 1690s onwards. Okay, so yeah, you could say in 1688 and 89, it wasn't about enacting new liberties. But I think you could say there was a shift in the balance of power in the 1690s with things like the Triennial Act, 1694, and something like the Civil List Act, 1697. Okay, so I think you could kind of challenge Coward on that and say, yes, that's true of 88 and 89, but not if we take a broader outlook. So overall, in summary, for paragraph 1, when you're talking about Coward's interpretation that the Glorious Revolution didn't have revolutionary effects, I think you'd probably argue that Coward is largely true, is largely convincing and valid when talking about 88 and 89. However, if we take the scope, broader, it's less convincing because of the changes that happened in the 1690s. Okay, so now we go on to extract 2, Buchholz and Key, and they are taking the longer term view. They're going up to 1701, and they're saying actually that it did have the Glorious Revolution did have significant effects. So it has longer term view up to 1701. Okay, and in terms of what the quotes that I'm going to pull out of here, if we look at kind of 19 and 20, from then on, the ultimate sovereign power in England was vested in Parliament. Okay, and I think you could talk about something like the Public Accounts Act. I think you could talk about some aspects of the Bill of Rights, where they actually set out limits to the monarch's power, those kind of things, to agree that the balance of power did shift. Okay, then I think you can move on to lines 24 and 25. And as I always say, if you can find better quotes, better evidence, absolutely, go for it. That's great. So 24 and 25, the days when the monarch could dissolve Parliament to avoid confrontation or inconvenient legislation, let alone rule entirely without it, were over. So this idea that the monarch now relied on Parliament, and I think you could say William relied on Parliament for money during the war, and then you could back that up with so Parliament used that as a leverage against him. So the Triennial Act of 1694 is evidence that they used that against him and became a kind of a partner in government. Unlike if you compare it back to Charles I, where he just dissolved Parliament, just got rid of them. Charles II dissolved Parliament. That can't happen anymore. Okay, so you're kind of agreeing with Buchholz and Key here. You're agreeing with extract 2 that there was a significant change. Okay, and then finally, if we go to line 28 and 29, thus 1688 to 89 marks a shift from a monarch's parliament to a parliament as a separate, permanent, and ultimately dominant institution. Okay, and I think, yeah, if we're going back to 1688 and 89, I think you could talk about the peers, the 7 peers who invited William, and I think this does lead to a shift in the balance of power. It's the end of divine right. Parliament are kind of calling the shots, and then in summary, Buchholz and Key, I think you'd maybe say that this is taking a broader view. It's looking at the longer term impact, that the effects were significant. And then in conclusion, really it's up to you. Do you think that the changes that you've talked about can be considered revolutionary or not? And I would probably come down to the idea that it depends whether you're looking at the Glorious Revolution to mean 1688 and 89, or if you're going up to 1701, because I think it is different if you're just looking at 88 and 89, which is somewhat limited, comparing to the 1690s and up to 1701. So I hope that was useful. Any questions, please leave a comment, and I'll link to all the other videos on this topic and the other past paper walkthrough that I've done on this in the comments, in the description. Thanks so much for listening.